You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, the proud affiliate of Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, my partner in crime, Skyler Timmons. Skyler, how you doing this afternoon?
It's windy in here, as you can see from this sheet, waving in the breeze.
Well, those are the whispers of baseball secrets.
Ooh, it's a ghost.
Exactly. It's ghosts.
Hey, I doubt it.
That's true, Fishman.
But we got a great program for you today for this week, and we might as well just dive right into it. Something that we've been asking for pretty much all year is the kids got to play, and you know what? The kids have been playing. The last couple lineups we have had have largely been Nolan Jones, Brenton Doyle, and Jordan Beck in the outfield. Michael Toglia has played, I believe, 59 now consecutive games at first base. And over the weekend against the New York Yankees, the Rockies put out a pitching group where everyone that pitched was a rookie, and they were all received by a rookie. And that was Drew Romo behind the plate, and it was Bradley Blaylock, Angel Chivier, Anthony Molina also pitched, and Luis Peralta made his big league debut for the Rockies. It's not always been pretty, but there's not really a whole lot in the books for pretty when it comes to what's left for this season with the Rockies.
Yeah, this has been something that a team like the Rockies need to do, especially at this point in the season. You've really got nothing to play for aside from trying to be spoiler to other teams, play good baseball, try to win games. It's perfectly fine. But it's about breaking in guys and getting a step up on the process of building a team for 2025. And especially over that weekend, they kept throwing out a roster where guys were most of the guys in the lineup were under the age of 26. A lot of the guys they deployed on some of those days in New York under the age of 26. There was like the old guys were Charlie Blackmon, Jacob Stallings, and Jake Cave. Did I repeat one of those guys?
No.
Anyways, those have been the guys they've been deploying, and then you throw in some of the others, but generally that position player group has been 26 and under, full of rookies. What was it? Saturday was like 10 rookies that they threw out.
Yeah, and we've been seeing that a lot recently where, 9 of 9 players the Rockies are putting out in that starting lineup are homegrown guys from within the organization as well. Especially with, the departure of Elias Diaz and Jake Cave playing less, and when Jacob Stallings isn't in the lineup, pretty much everybody who's taking the field is a product of this organization and skewing younger, where it's pretty much just been the old men of the group are Charlie Blackmon and Ryan McMahon.
And I hear thunder, and it must be the roars of applause from the heavens about the fact that, we're seeing younger guys just breaking their teeth, cutting their teeth there at the big league level. They drew Romo, which is good. Yeah. Ultimately, as much as we'd like all these guys to be hitting on all cylinders and the Rockies go on a miraculous run and win like 30 games somehow, we know that's unrealistic. And so, like you said, it's not always going to be pretty. We're going to see growing pains of these guys struggling, but it's something we've talked about for the past several years. It's more compelling baseball to watch because we have a purpose to watching it. It's, I want to watch Drew Romo catch. No, we talked to him on this show. Fantastic guy, a good kid. He's got a good head on his shoulders. And so we're going to get to see him learn and grow and root for him. Like, okay, we hope Drew can figure it out. And you can see little instances. He's slowly getting more comfortable at the plate. He's thrown out a 1-for-4 performance. He's getting into RBI, had his first double over the weekend. So we're seeing him play more. We've talked about Michael Toglia. We get to see him play way more. Leads the league I wish he led the league in home runs. Leads the team in home runs in shorter playing time since he's been up. So it's just refreshing to see some of these young guys come up, be successful, like a Bradley Blaylock, Luis Peralta. It's fun to see them succeed, and it gives you a purpose when you're watching Rockies baseball, even if they still kind of stink.
Oh yeah, I mean the team only has 17 losses to go until they hit the century mark again,
Ooh.
and a pretty tough schedule the rest of the way.
Yeah.
You know, that 100-loss season, the second one, probably going to happen again. And you know what? It does hurt a little less now that the Band-Aid's been ripped off and we had it last year. That's not to say I want us to win, to lose 100 games, but it's more of just, you know, it's coming and it is what it is. You know, Drew Romo, speaking of this kid having a good head on his shoulders, just worth briefly mentioning, you know, bit of a scary situation in today's Rockies-Yankees game where the home plate umpire, Nick Marley, ended up just totally freak accident where Giancarlo Stanton's bat just broke and the barrel swung around and hit the home plate umpire in the head and neck. And Drew Romo immediately recognized something was wrong and, you know, attended to home plate umpire Nick Marley. And it's just one of those things, just like, you know what, this is a good kid we got on our team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes you wonder with a lot of these guys that we're seeing more. One, the freak accidents of injuries that have subjected this team to, how much playing time Jake Cave has gotten this year. And you know, a lot of fans aren't happy with him still. But like we talked about before, at least the man has contributed to the Rockies. Hasn't been terrible. But you think back where we're seeing now and Jones, Doyle, Beck outfield, you're like, man, if some things had just gone differently this year, we could have had that all year. Probably doesn't change the Rockies' fortunes, but it just helps the team moving forward where Jones doesn't get injured and is able to just replicate or build upon last year instead of the freak accidents and troubles he's had. Jordan Beck maybe gets to play more instead of breaking his dang hand. And instead then we get the outfield of there's Sam Hilliard or Sean Bouchard, and there's Jake Cave. There's Chris Bryan out there for who knows why for 2 weeks at a time.
Please stop.
Please stop. So it's so wonder. I wish the Rockies could have been doing more of this earlier. Some of these guys sooner, like a Drew Romo up in June. What would that do? And I can understand where the Rockies bringing up guys now gives them an extra year, gives them that full rookie status for next year still. So everybody that plays from when Drew Romo gets called up to the end of the season, they'll retain rookie status for next year. But it just makes me wish, man, I wish we could have seen some of these guys sooner, maybe, especially some of these pitchers. But some of them we couldn't see sooner because we just barely got them like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's really been so. We were all pretty frustrated at the Rockies' overall inaction at the trade deadline, but the moves that this team did make are really paying off in spades right now, especially with Bradley Blaylock. My goodness, 3 starts now with the big league organization, his first 3 career MLB starts, and they've all been really solid. This kid is 23 years old and had never started a big league game. He had made his debut earlier in the year against, I believe it was the Padres, and pitched an inning scoreless of relief, but had never done that the start. And that's what he is. He's a starting pitcher. And he's come in now and just had 3 straight really good starts, including one against a very good New York Yankees team.
Yeah. And even though he issued 4 walks, didn't bother him really.
Yeah, exactly. Where he's been calm and he's kept things really locked down. I'm really, really pleased with this kid. And he's not flashy. That's, I think, a big thing a lot of people are pointing out is he's not a flashy pitcher. But you know what? You don't need to be flashy if you're just going out there and collecting your outs and getting it done. He's gone more than 5 innings in each start. So 16 2/3 total innings. He struck out 11. He has walked 7. And I do feel as though as he keeps going, those walks are going to calm back down. He was not particularly known for being a walk-heavy pitcher. And, a 3.24 ERA. So he's given up like 2-3 runs when he's coming out here, he's getting the job done and leaving the game in a position for the Rockies to be successful. And this is a guy who you look at him and you watch him pitch and go, here's a guy who's maybe not going to be your ace, but is a solid back end rotational starter.
Yeah. You say, now here's a guy, reminds me of Keith David in Community. Now this man really knows his meatballs. But that's beside the point. Look it up. Keith Davidson in Community. He was one of the saving graces in that awful final season. That was on Yahoo streaming service, Evan. That's right. Yahoo had a streaming service and had the 6th season of Community. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not a very good season. It's okay. But
the last season of things are rarely good, unfortunately.
Especially the turmoil that show went through in those last couple of seasons. But you hope with maybe like a Blaylock coming up and having that success, and partly, like we're saying, there's room for growth. Like, he's not a finished product, but he's good enough where he can develop at the big league level like he is. No reliable starter right now. No, finds shakiness at times, but again, he's 23, making his 3rd big league start. Not too shabby, and there's room for growth. And so you hope maybe this can give the Rockies confidence, because that could be part of the thing, I think, for the Rockies, is that they're maybe sometimes weary and not fully trusting of their own development process, because I think they feel like maybe they've burned or been burned or missed on so many guys. But now we're seeing some of the better talent they've brought into the system starting to peek through. And hopefully maybe that's giving Bill Schmidt especially confidence to say, no, we're going to bring these guys up and see what they have. I'm going to trade for Bradley Blaylock. Okay, we're going to call him up, see what he can do. Not too shabby. Same with the Romo. We're going to bring up Romo now. He's going to learn and cut his teeth there at the catching position because we believe in him. And so I think maybe that can be one of the best positive repercussions from letting these younger guys play.
I do feel like maybe Bill Schmidt is starting to exercise a little bit more control on things.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot more of his guys being up and getting this playing time. Luis Peralta especially was very impressive this weekend against the Yankees. Inning and 2/3, collected his first 2 career strikeouts. And then down in Spokane last night, we had Eugenio Herrera, who pitched 7 2-hit innings against the Hillsboro Hops without giving up a run and struck out 6. Like, these guys look the part. And, one could argue that Eugenio Herrera is maybe playing, he's still only playing high A ball and he could maybe be at double A at this point. But again, he's really young too. He just turned 21 within the last week.
Yeah.
And there's still plenty of time for that. We're getting all these young guys. Romo is still really young. Jordan Beck is still really young. Ezekiel Tovar, who's now almost done with his 2nd full season, is still really young.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that while some of the older guys kind of take a little bit of a step backward. Charlie Blackmon is still playing consistently, and I think that's going to be a thing for pretty much the rest of the season. But right now, we found a really good rhythm where that's not really a problem, because Chuck is mostly playing DH, and in the last week or so, who's mostly been out in right field? It's been Jordan Beck. And you can tell that Beck is needing a little bit of adjustment. He's played left field for most of his season with the Rockies, and now he's back from injury and he's playing right. But he's playing, and now that Nolan Jones is back, Nolan Jones has been in left field pretty much every game, and Jake Cave has made 2 starts in the last week
and made the most of them. Boy, howdy.
His start today against the Yankees wasn't that great, but then he had a start over the weekend where he had 4 hits, his first ever 4-hit game, and was, for the 2nd time this season, a triple away from the cycle.
Yeah. And it's at this point where you're seeing the ideal scenario of veterans and their role on the team, where, okay, you have Jacob Stallings, with a rookie catcher, perfectly fine. They're getting that good split of playing time between the two. No complaints there. Charlie Blackmon, Okay, yeah, he's your Todd Helton, your face of the franchise, veteran that's been there 13 years. Perfectly fine that he's in there as the DH. He'll get some days off as needed, but he's going to be in there to DH and lead the charge for the kids. And then Jake Cave is going to be that good presence on the bench. No, you see, he has a lot of fun. No, it's the thing you can talk about with Jake Cave. I think he's a good guy to just have around these youngsters because he's still kind of young. He's only 31, so he's not like some ancient old man. He just looks like it. That silver fox. No, he's gets his playing time where he does, makes the most of it, accepts his role on the team. And we've talked about all that before, so we don't need to reiterate it.
Yeah.
But he knows what his role is supposed to be, and then he expanded on that role as needed this year.
And what's funny is you mentioned earlier how injuries have played such a big role in a lot of the frustrations of the much older lineup that the Rockies have fielded for large parts of the year, seeing more of Sam Hilliard, Jake Cave starting and appearing in so many games this year, Charlie Blackmon and Chris Bryant playing in the outfield more regularly. And now we're sort of seeing the inverse of that, where Chris Bryant, we don't know if he's going to play again the rest of the year.
Yeah.
He's essentially shut down at this point. And all of the other guys are back. They're healthy. They've been activated. And we have seen a dramatic decrease in playing time for, Jake Cave, who's making the most of what he's got, and Sam Hilliard as well, who I don't believe has appeared in a couple of ball games with the return of Nolan Jones. And for Jake Cave, we've talked about this at length, but I'm starting to really agree with you, Skyler, where it's like Jake Cave is probably going to be here next year. And you know what? If it's in the role that we are seeing him in now, where he's starting maybe 1-2 games a week, and other than that, he's the reserve outfielder and a mentor in the clubhouse, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. The role he had at the start of the year. And we talked about that on here. We're like, we like Jake Cave because he's filling the role. The Rockies are using him the way they should, where he's an occasional backup outfielder, comes in as a pinch hitter, gets a double. Okay. And then and injuries and everything else forced him into a different role. But now we're back to where we wanted to be maybe at the beginning of the year, and seeing these youngsters get a chance. And it's good to see. It gives you hope or something, especially at this time of year, gives you something to support when you're watching the Rockies. As much as it sucks that's what you have to look forward to every year is youngsters playing over the final 5-6 weeks. It's better than nothing. Could be worse. Well,
and it's not that we don't still have our hearts open for the old guys in here. Like I still don't feel great about that we had to release Luis Diaz, but it was the right move.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he is still a free agent after going through waivers twice, he went through outright waivers and release waivers, and is still not signed to a team, I think says a lot into the truth of the matter of what the deadline was, where, I was mad. If you'll remember when we recorded, and you'll remember me on social media, that we didn't trade Diaz, but that value just wasn't there. And Diaz has been such an important part of this team for so many years. Even this year, he was still worth 1.2 WAR per Baseball Reference, but it was time to go. And now we're seeing Drew Romo fill in, and I am so much more excited to be watching Drew Romo behind the plate pretty frequently. And it was the right move. And if we're moving towards a younger team, which is what the team needs to be doing, we're seeing the young guys turn out.
Yeah. You see it out in the bullpen. Victor Vodnik, even though he's injured right now, has been a rock all year at the back end of the bullpen. Angel Chivi, he's starting to step up. We're seeing good stuff from him. Anthony Molina, I think I'm still out on him. I just don't know what exactly to make of him yet. But after this year, he doesn't have to be on the roster anymore, so he can go get seasoned down in AAA. So that'll be nice.
Yeah, the situation for Molina is just such a really bizarre one because it was Rule 5 draft. They are essentially required to keep him on the roster, even though he's not necessarily ready for that kind of workload yet. But he doesn't work that much because of that. It's hard.
But we're seeing Luis Peralta come up. Hey, another lefty, Evan. How about that?
We're allowed to have
Another
more than one of those?
yeah, apparently. Uh, he's debuted, looked good. And then there's guys on the way. Seth Halverson, Jaden Hill, Zach Agnos, tons of guys. Dugan Darnell, I'll throw in there. Tons of dudes, pitching-wise. And then you have Zach Veen, who's there in AAA now. Just barely started there, coming back from injury. Chance we see him by the end of the year. Yanquiel Fernandez is on the horizon. So they're a coming. It's a good feeling, good thing to see of, okay, Rockies are coming. There's some youth coming. We'll see what we have. There's an exciting group in there if the Rockies can just play their cards right and use them the way they need to.
The trees are bearing fruit for the Rockies farm system. And we've seen that with how much more highly the Rockies farm system has been ranked this year, where they're considering it a top 15 farm system in MLB and in other outlets. So I feel like there's a path forward here, and a lot of it's going to have to do with some stuff that goes into the off season and next season, and we're going to talk about that right after our first ad break here, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
What a segue.
Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler, and as we alluded to at the end of the last segment, the Rockies youth movement and future movement has a lot riding on what's going to happen this off season, more so than what happens the rest of this season. The Rockies are going to see a lot of younger players get more playing time to the rest of this season. Bill Schmidt's guys coming in, but there is one big hanging question mark, and I'll start this off by saying the Seattle Mariners, who have had 3 straight winning seasons and broke their playoff curse under Scott Servais, have dismissed Scott Servais before the end of the season. And the Colorado Rockies find themselves in a similar place, but sort of the opposite, where instead of dismissing a manager after several winning seasons because of how things have shaken out this season and it's time for a new perspective and a new voice, the Rockies now have cemented 6 consecutive losing seasons and are currently still clinging on to Mr. Harry Ralston Black as the manager of this franchise.
Yeah, it's interesting to see those parallels. Former Rocky, I guess it's pronounced Service, even though it does look like Servais. I guess it is just Service. Former Rocky Scott Service played for the Rockies in 2000 for 33 games. It didn't go very well. But, interesting to see that just where they were. And a big part of it for the Mariners was they were in first place a lot of this year. And then since June, they've just sort of been into a free fall. They have, despite one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, they overall have one of the worst offenses in baseball, which is weird when you consider some of the guys that they have in there, like a Julio Rodriguez, but nothing's worked out for them this year. And now they're slowly seeing their just status slip away. And the Astros have overtaken them, and now they're battling for that wild card spot and all that stuff. Not a fun time to be in Seattle. And so, you have to make a change because you're in free fall. You need a new voice. Somebody's got to right the ship. And is it all Scott Service's fault? Probably not. But that's the role of the manager. He's the skipper, the head of the ship. It's on his head how the team performs a lot of the time. Regardless of what he's given, it still falls on him.
Yeah, the Mariners found themselves back to 500 for the first time since April. And, general manager Jerry DiPoto ended up saying, collectively, we determined that our organization needed this. We needed to do something to create a different theme, a different vibe in our clubhouse. I'm not trying to throw Scott under a bus here at all. I can't say enough positive things about the things he did in contributing here, but I do think we needed a new voice.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, Skyler, that's where both you and I fall when it comes to Bud Black. Buddy gets a lot of hate from the fans on Twitter and other social media places, in our comment section on Purple Row, all over the place. And some of it is justified and some of it is not. We've said time and time again that to blame everything for where this team is at right now on Buddy is simply not true. That's not what has happened. That's not where we're at. But at the same time, there are things that you look at Bud Black and you go, it's time to move on. And, we're now at 6 consecutive losing seasons under Bud. And do I think that Bud is, in general, a good manager? Yes. And do I think he could be a good manager elsewhere? You betcha. But right now, as this team is getting younger and has been just really struggling for the last 6 seasons, and now it's looking like 2 back-to-back 100-loss seasons, it's exactly what DePoto said with Scott Service. A new voice is needed, a new vibe, a new theme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where we fall with Bud Black. He has now managed more games than any other manager in Rockies history, overtaking Clint Hurdle this past week. And part of me is like, seriously? Because I think a lot of us hold Clint Hurdle just kind of the upper epsilon, whatever that word is, upper epsilon.
Or no, echelon. Goodness,
echelon.
I said epsilon so confidently because you poisoned my brain.
Mm-hmm. But we think of him and like Don Baylor, even Jim Tracy to an extent, but really Don Baylor and Clint Hurdle, those guys are the cream of the crop when it comes to Rockies managers, legendary Rockies managers. No, and I think for the most part, pretty beloved by fans in general. Bud Black, and it may be just because of recency bias and just being more aware of what fans are saying about the manager over these past 6 years, that probably could be part of it. But he just doesn't feel like he's up to that caliber. But he's been with the Rockies now for 6+ years. No, it's been 6 losing seasons. 8 years or whatever, how long he's been here. And it's just felt like it's coincided with just how bad the Rockies have been over these past 6 years after the playoff appearances. And you look at Bud Black and see that what he does as a manager kind of contradicts what the Rockies should be trying to do. Like we were talking about in the first segment with the youth movement.
Yeah.
And so he for a team in a rebuild that needs to rebuild and get younger and build for the future, a 67-year-old, starting pitching manager just isn't the right man for the job anymore. Like DePoto said, the Rockies need a new voice at the helm who can help try to usher in the new era of Rockies baseball.
And as I've said before, I think Bud Black was the right man for the job for the 2017 and 2018 playoff runs. He came in with a roster that, according to Walt Weiss, was just on the cusp and needed that push right over. A very talented, very relatively loaded roster. And he took that team to back-to-back playoff appearances. But then after that is when things sort of started to fall apart as the older talent started to filter out for various reasons that we're not going to rehash right now because that doesn't need to be litigated again. But I think now, after these 6 straight losing seasons, after the franchise's first 100-loss season and the second coming up quickly, I think it's overshadowed a lot of that. I think it's overshadowed Bud Black's original success.
Yeah.
Is that we've just had, 6 losing seasons, each one worse than the last. And a lot of people tend to even forget. Like, I've seen people flat out remember. It's like, oh, Bud's been terrible for his entire tenure. And it's like, but we went to the playoffs twice.
No.
And, I will always remember him very fondly for that. And I think after Bud is gone, eventually he's going to be remembered of a lot more fondly than he is right now. I think right now what we've got is that we've got fans who are tired of losing. And as the face of the organization, for better or for worse, as the manager, that falls onto Buddy Black. And it's also difficult because, like you mentioned, Buddy Black has now pitched the most, has now managed the most games for the Rockies in franchise history. But he's got the 3rd worst losing percentage and is just a little bit ahead of Jim Leland, who managed 1 season here.
I think a big part with Bud Black is that he sort of now is kind of that. extension of the front office and their failings that we see, and Buddy's out in front of that. So he's the company man. And I think that's part of what it's been, where he's kind of that yes man. He is the face of the organization. He is the voice and public persona of the front office, and kind of is out there to kind of demonstrate their ideals and their moves. And, he has to be out there and answer questions about what the team's doing and all that stuff. It's a tough job to be a manager, especially manager of a bad team. But still, it's that he's always been that kind of extension of Dick Monfort, Bill Schmidt, Jeff Bridich, guys that have haven't done the best things for the Rockies during his time here. And so I think that's what we latch on to is, Bud Black needs to go because he's just that extension of more of the same from the Rockies. And maybe it's kind of this false hope and foolish thinking that a new manager would change everything that we'd hope for. But you don't know unless you try. And it's something like that where Bud Black, it's time to move on. It's time to move on from him. Wonderful service. He's done the best he can. For better or for worse, whether it's personnel, talent-wise on the team, it hasn't been great at times. But he also hasn't really put the team in the best position to success sometimes of using the tools that he's gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Harold Castro didn't need to play 100 games in 2023, but he did. And because Bud Black just kept throwing him out there because he was a veteran. So there's things that he's done that haven't really helped the Rockies, and then there are things that he has done that have kind of helped.
Yeah. And there was an article in the Denver Post over the weekend by Patrick Saunders. The Denver Post says whether Bud Black stays or goes, he's deserved better. And there are some points in here that I can definitely agree with Patrick, but there's a line towards the end of the article where he says, "Do you see the pitchers Black has had to choose from? He's a manager, not a magician." And to some extent, I can agree with that. There's not been a lot of high caliber talent coming through the Rockies system. But at the same time, part of why Bud Black was brought in to this organization and what he's been praised for throughout his career is that he's a pitcher whisperer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he leads pitchers and he gets good results out of pitchers no matter what level of play they get. But what we've seen from Bud time and time again, especially over the last few seasons, is that we're not getting that better improvement from some guys we know can do better,
mm-hmm.
and from other guys who aren't really given a chance. The way that he manages the bullpen, the weird proclivity to put a rookie in his big league debut in with the bases loaded and nobody out.
Yeah, if I had a nickel for every time that's happened with Bud Black and the Rockies, I'd have a couple of nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened more than once.
Exactly. Or the overuse of certain guys in the bullpen, the dramatic overuse. And I get that we were a very taxed rotation last year due to injuries, but Justin Lawrence and Jake Bird still being used some of the most of any reliever in all of Major League Baseball last year. And we've seen the consequences of that this year where they just haven't really had it or have dealt with other injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And we've now seen it this year where Victor Vodnik has gotten a lot of use, way more than he's ever played in his entire professional career before. And now he's got that shoulder injury. And I'm not blaming Bud for the injury on his shoulder. Like, if you're a pitcher, you're going to get hurt at some point. There's really no such thing as an Iron Man pitcher anymore. Mm-hmm. But for Vodnik, we're now having to worry about kind of the same thing. Where are we going to have to worry about next year? What do we do if he struggles because of the overuse that he has seen this year?
Yeah. And part of it too, as a manager, the people he's surrounded himself, I don't know if he's the one that's ultimately making the decisions of bringing in coaches and stuff, or if it's kind of, he maybe suggests some guys and then Bill Schmidt's the one like, no, we're going to hire this guy. Because his pitching coaches, since Steve Foster decided to ascend to a higher plane, and by that I mean into the Rockies front office. He didn't die. but you kind of question, we're still doing this with our pitching coach. hasn't really brought in the best guys to surround him. And I think that's the thing that it boils down to with Bud Black is he's managing this team like it's the 1980s, 1990s, his brand of baseball. And in this year, 2024, that brand of baseball isn't going to work anymore. There's elements of the mentality of that era that you can definitely use and some fundamentals, but that's long gone. It's a different brand of baseball now, and Bud Black, I don't think, is really equipped for it. You know, we see a lot of conversations. They'll talk to him. And it's like, yeah, I like one of these modern things. We're learning how to use it a little bit more. Like, no, I don't need my manager to be learning how to do it. I need someone who has experience and knows what they're doing with it and how to utilize it. I don't want him in his Crash Course 101 sitting there in the dugout reading a book like, oh, I see. You know, a little bit more modern to the game. And that's something that we don't, I think that's the thing that we see most from Bud Black is it's just not up to speed with the modern game and just the way he does things and runs the team. It's just a weird vibe that's old school baseball in kind of a weird way.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is I don't even think it's a necessity for the Rockies to go, all right, Bud, you know, here's the door after, you know, however many years of service, so long, and good luck.
Yeah.
I don't recall saying good luck. But that getting him at least out of a coaching context. Like if the Rockies said, hey, Bud, do you want to be a special assistant to the GM and travel around like Clint and Todd do and talk to some of these kids about what it's like to be a big leaguer and help them with some of that stuff? You know what? I wouldn't terribly mind that. But the thing is, the big league coaching staff needs to be, and this is for all of them. This is not just Bud. This is even Bam Bam, and this is Daryl Scott. This is, you need a team of coaches that are dialed into the modern game of baseball, the game that we are playing right now. And we don't really have that. It's like you said, it's very outdated. And, you know, the problem is, you know, we don't want a manager that's learning these things on the fly, but there's still going to be a little bit of that no matter what we do, because I do strongly believe that no matter who is going to be our manager next year, they are probably going to be a first-time big league manager. And there's going to be a lot to learn there. But the bright side with going with these younger guys is that if you pick a younger manager candidate, then they're learning along with the younger players that they're playing with, but they also are a little more exposed to the modern game of baseball and them learning alongside their players.
Well, look at Stephen Vogt out in Cleveland. They've had a really good year, and Stephen Vogt has had a really good season with them.
Yeah, Stephen Vogt's been an incredible first-year manager for the Cleveland Guardians, who I don't know if they still are, but they led the team in wins for a little bit this season. Not the team, the league in wins for a little bit this season.
Cleveland led their team in wins.
I mean, they did, though. They led last year's team. They've been a very good and very effective team this year. And, you know, a lot of that might still be some of what we talked about with Buddy, of inheriting some very good players. You've got Jose Ramirez and some very good pitchers and some really interesting talent on that team. But there's also a lot of really young guys who are sort of popping up and being ready to play out there. And frankly, I think the manager who's probably going to get chosen, if they stay inside the organization, is Warren Schaefer, the third base coach, former manager of the AAA Albuquerque Isotopes. But I actually wouldn't hate that because of what we know about Schaefer.
Yeah. And he's checks a lot of boxes. You know, he's been in the organization as a player in the minors forever. And then once he was done with that, they're like, okay, now just transition into coaching. And so he's worked at pretty much every level, more or less, for a long time. He's been a Rockies lifer in the organization. So he checks a lot of boxes. But I think him having managed and coached young players and helping them develop, it's something that a young team like the Rockies need. he can check a lot of boxes and do a lot of good things. Bud Black was a veterans manager. That's why it worked well when he took over for the Rockies, because it was bursting at the seams with a ton of big league talent, superstars even. And so he had that. Walt Weiss was kind of that in between and everything. And then Jim Tracy inherits a lot of homegrown guys that are now getting more veterans and stuff. So you have to fit the right manager at the right time. Bud Black, like you said, the right manager at a certain point, but at some point they stop being the right person for the job. It's just how it works especially in this kind of line of work where there's a constant revolving door all the time. As much as Dick Monfort wants to run it like a mom and pop store, and so-and-so's been there for 35 years, lived in the same town, comes to work every day, we can't fire him. That doesn't work in the baseball business. And so luckily, them refraining from coming to a contract extension gives it a nice, respectable way out of, we just decided to mutually part ways. We're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to fire him and whatnot. There's a built-in escape clause right now, Evan.
Yeah. And, even the greatest coaches of all time reached a point where they were no longer the right man for the job in every sport. And so it's nothing to be ashamed of or look down or anything like that for no longer being the right man for the job. It happens to the best of us, and it happens regardless, because time marches onward. And for Buddy, he's no longer the right man for the job. But like I said, I really do think a couple of years are going to pass, and the Rockies are going to get through this rough stretch that they're in right now. And people are going to look back on Bud Black a lot more fondly.
Hopefully.
I do. I hope so. Or I think it's going to happen. But that's where we're at for right now. We have one more little segment. Stick around through this ad break. We've got something pretty special for you here.
Yeah. It's fun. Stick around.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our third and final segment of Affected by Altitude for this week. I'm Evan, and that's Skyler, and we're going to cut away because we have got a real treat for you guys. We were joined earlier this week by Spokane Indians third baseman and Colorado Rockies draft pick Kyle Karros in the studio for an interview. So we're going to go ahead and fade right into that. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, another special Rooftop Mingle that we've got going here, and a very special guest. But before that, I'm Skyler Timmons, joined here by Evan Lang, here with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, Colorado Rockies podcast with Fans First Sports Network. And we are joined once again by a very special guest. I guess this is his first time, but another special guest nonetheless. It is a third baseman, Rockies 2023 draft pick, currently ranked 19th on the MLB.com pipeline rankings for the Rockies. It's a special one. We're really excited down with the Spokane Indians. It's Kyle Karros. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us.
What's up, guys? Happy to be on.
Good. You got nice and relaxed there. Nice couch there in Spokane. It's looking
right.
good.
In Hillsboro.
Oh, you're in Hillsboro. That's right.
Yep.
You guys are on the road playing in the Hops.
That's right.
I was in Oregon for 2 years, so I know where Hillsboro is. I was in Forest Grove, which is like right over the corner from Hillsboro.
Gotcha.
Hillsboro is great, and popular spot with former Rockies catching prospect Ben Petrick.
There you go. Yeah, the Oregon connection. But we're not here to just talk about Oregon because we're here to talk about Kyle and your career. And first off, we got to congratulate you. You're having one heck of a season down there in Spokane. Some would say an MVP caliber season out there in the Northwest League. But how have you been feeling this year? What's been clicking for you?
I think I've just been given a lot of freedom this year, freedom to try new things at the plate with my setup, with my approach. So a lot of credit goes to the staff here and the Rockies org as a whole. They've allowed me to kind of just do me and play around with stuff. And a lot of it has worked. A lot of it has felt great. Um, but I just think creating that loose environment for me, and then the guys here have been great. They've been a great support team. Um, keep it loose, keep things fun off the field. That always helps stuff on the field in turn. But yeah, just the environment they've created up here, it's been really good and allowed me to really flourish.
Yeah, Kyle, you're leading the Northwest League right now in doubles, home runs, RBI, batting average, slugging percentage, and OPS, and it's causing you to really surge in a lot of Rockies prospect rankings, which is awesome to see. But is there anything in particular that you have changed or worked on with your approach when it comes to hitting after going up to Spokane this year?
Yeah, I think launch angle was definitely something we've gotten into, and I mean that's always a slippery subject, just on how you achieve launch angle. It's not necessarily just dropping the back shoulder and letting it fly. But I think my exit velos have always been there. My plate discipline, zone awareness has always been there. And like I said, I was always hitting the ball hard, but a lot of times it was on the ground, so you didn't see a lot of slug or production. Um, I was always able to drive in runs, so that's nothing new for me. But I've really been able to get the ball in the air more this year, and we've seen that with doubles and home runs. Um, and like I said, I've achieved that not so much by like just dropping my back shoulder, but kind of just catching the ball a little bit out in front of me. And maybe I sacrifice some zone awareness and some plate discipline just because I'm making decisions a little bit earlier, but it allows me to get the head out and drive the baseball on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, doing research. I was looking through some highlights from this year, and I noticed earlier in the year you're a little bit more upright in your stance, and then I've noticed as of late you got that wide kind of deep stance in the box. And I was just wondering what you can tell us about that.
Yeah, all my teammates give me hell for that stance. They always love impersonating it because it is kind of a unique look.
Yeah.
But that was really just same thing. Like I've always hit the ball hard, and it was just about getting the barrel to the ball on a more consistent basis. So I just wanted to eliminate any big load I had or any head movement or just excess stuff in the swing that I didn't really need to generate more power. I just needed to hit the ball in a better spot. So I just tried to simplify everything, get a little wider. I took out the stride. So just it allows me to see the ball better and just be short to it and get the barrel on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Besides, we need a comeback for more unique batting stances.
Yeah, because I watched the highlight. I think is a pretty recent home run that you had, and the angle ahead. You got a wide stance there and really deep.
There's some. I don't know if batters boxes are regulation in the minor leagues, but like there's some batters boxes where I feel like I'm almost like not fitting in them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty standard in the minors. There's sometimes it's not even lined up with home plate.
Yeah, exactly.
But I like that because in those other footage, I was like, he kind of looks like his dad. You kind of look like your dad in the box, but then you can see that differences, and then that wide stance really extreme, but it's working for you. Slightly closed, that no load, like you mentioned.
Yep.
It's
been good. I think that's part of baseball. Like it's working right now. I mean, we'll see what I'm doing come the end of the season. Like it's a game of constant adjustments. But I feel good with it now. I'm not planning on changing it anytime soon. So we'll ride with it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, Skyler brought up your dad, who I'm sure you're aware was an esteemed Rockies killer back in the day when he was with the Dodgers.
So I've heard.
He had more home runs, doubles, and RBI than any other team he faced against when he played the Rockies. So any chance you might be feeling like sticking it to the old man a little bit and becoming an esteemed Dodgers killer for us?
That'd be something. I'd be absolutely on board with that. But maybe it's something about the blood or the Karros name that does well in Denver. So we'll see.
I think I like that where there's that connection. We can transition this, talk a little bit about that with your dad and everything. I saw other interviews that you did to Spokane earlier in the year, just talking about working with your dad as the hitting coach and that relationship with baseball.
Hmm.
And just how has he helped you on your journey and just that relationship in general, being the son of a former big leaguer?
I think this year has actually like been the biggest change for me and his relationship. Um, and I honestly think that's why I've been so successful this year.
Hmm.
He's always been like my number one hitting coach and all that. Everything I know about hitting pretty much comes from him, which isn't a bad source, but it
Yeah.
is. He does have a lot of influence over it. Um, and then this year, I was out here playing, having a good year, kind of just on my own. We talk from time to time. And then there was one weekend where my mom and dad came out here and just to visit. They watched me play. We spent the weekend together, and like it was like one of my like most miserable weekends I've had here. And I'm like, okay, this like something needs to be addressed here. Like this should be my favorite weekend ever. Like my parents are here. This should be great. Um, but after that weekend, like I was thinking about it. I'm like, damn, something's not right. So we had a talk. Pretty much just like, look, like I'm at the point in my life where like I am who I am. Like you don't need to be like super nitpicky on me. You don't need to be super involved. I'm 22 years old now. Like obviously I'm gonna come to you for stuff. Like I don't have everything figured out. Um, but as far as just like letting me play, just letting me enjoy baseball and not feel like I have this pressure or I have some sort of expectation to live up to with him. I just had a talk with him. I was like, just be a dad. Like, come to the ballpark, watch me play, enjoy it, grab a hot dog. Like, that's never been the case with him. It's always felt like I have a scout in the stands or
Yeah.
national cross checker, honestly.
Hmm.
But we had a discussion, and since then, like, our relationship has been so much better. I'm playing better baseball than I've ever played. And I really do think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I know that can be like that difficult thing of the parent and everything of wanting to control it, but then just kind of
Hmm.
let you go and do your own thing and become your own
Yeah,
ball player. I think it's a tough one for the parents,
for
and
sure.
it's awesome that you're able
Yeah.
to kind of work that out.
Hmm.
And it's funny because your teammate Glenn Allen Jr. or GJ,
Yep.
I wonder how similar his situation is because his dad literally a coach with the Rockies organization for a really
Yeah.
long time.
I'm pretty close with G, and we had a talk, and I was explaining the same thing I just explained to you guys, and he said, funny enough, like when he was my age, he had a very similar interaction, a very similar conversation with his dad. So I think it's part of the growing up process, and I think it's really beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, and it's cool because baseball is such a family business for the Karros family. I mean, your brother's having a great season with high A affiliate for the Dodgers. Can you're in rival farm systems, as it were, but do you feel
Hmm.
like your brother Jared is a guy that you can go to for this kind of stuff as well?
Absolutely. I mean, he deals with similar thing. I don't think it's quite the same just because he kind of had that conversation back in high school when he told me he was done hitting. At that point, it was kind of out of my dad's hands. He didn't have much to offer on the pitching side of things. So it is a little different, but yeah, he gets it as well. We're as close as ever. We're doing this thing together. Yeah, he's having a good year. He got up to Double A. He got hurt like a month ago. Nothing serious. I think he's going to get sent back out to Double A next week or so.
Awesome.
Finish up the year there.
When it comes down to it, are you taking your brother deep?
I mean, we'll see. I had a backside double off him this offseason. But I kind of knew what pitch was coming just because I'm
Yeah,
pretty familiar with the way he pitches.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm sure I'll get some ABs off him this offseason too, and hopefully I spin one out of here.
well, if you both get up to the bigs around the same time, there's got to be some steak dinners riding on it for those
That'd be something.
matchups.
Absolutely, that'd be unreal.
And someone do in relation, what has been the most valuable just baseball lesson that you've learned either from your brother or from your dad that's just helped you in your baseball career?
Um, I just say the understanding of it. Like I think so much with baseball, like you're expected to produce every single night you go out there, and that's just not realistic. Um, and I can be pretty hard on myself a lot.
Hmm.
And I think having my dad there Like, he's been through it, he understands it, and like he's there to let me know that 4 at bats in 500 at bat season doesn't mean anything in the end of the day. So just to show up, because dreading on those 4 at bats does nothing for you. Showing up to the park the next day with a weird attitude because you went 0 for 4, absolutely nothing for you in the long run. So I think that part, just to go through it, and enjoy the ups and downs of it, because that's the game we play. That's all part of it. I think that's probably the biggest thing, which allows me to, just keep going every day.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to look at it, because I always try and tell some of the more casual fans, it's like everybody from the Hall of Fame pitchers to just a journeyman backup outfielder is going to have really good days, and they're going to have some pretty bad days, and it's just not letting those hang on you. So
Another big
mindset.
Big Rockies mind, who's been huge with me, is Clint Hurdle. And he dropped the line of the year on me the other day. It was probably like 2 months ago. I was like scuffling a little bit, and we were talking through my struggles. And then I had like a big hit, like walk-off home run against Vancouver. And then he texted me. I was like, baseball's just a crazy ride. That's what I texted him. And he sent back, he was like, that's why I choose to put on a seatbelt and wear a helmet. And that's like, it's so spot on. Like, you're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs. Just buckle up, put on a helmet, and just enjoy the ride.
That is an extremely Clint Hurdle line.
That's right.
And I think I like that, because in the Rockies organization, they have Todd Helton, Clint Hurdle, guys that can kind of travel around the minors and give advice. But the coaching staff there that you're working with every day, what's it been like playing under the Spokane team and just your team in general this season? Because you guys are headed to the playoffs after claiming a spot in the first half. Just what's it been like there in Spokane with the team and with the coaching staff?
I think it's very player-led. I think, like I mentioned earlier, our staff gives us a lot of freedom to kind of take care of our business and be ready to go come game time. So I think that's the most effective way to lead a team and to coach a team, is to let the players run it. Obviously, it requires the right players in the right spots. I mean, I'm sure there's some clubs around the country that would probably take advantage of that and just kind of mess around and not really take things seriously. But I think we have the right players here to kind of allow that coaching style to flourish. And we've seen that. I mean, we're the best team in this league by a couple games the second half as well. So I think that's kind of the main kind of idea here, is to kind of take it out of the coach's hands and put it in the players. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. It's what makes Spokane right now such a unique team, because there's so many interesting personalities and players on that team, and it's just all clicking
going
really well. I'd love to get you going on that. Who would you say is the strongest personality in the clubhouse?
I mean, it just the crazy thing for me in my first year is, like, the team we have now is completely different than the team we had at the beginning of the year. And it's all unique in its own way. And that's obviously new for me. Like, college, we're playing with the same guys, like, for the most part. But this has been crazy. It's like you get close to people and then they're gone, So, but the personalities, I mean, early on we had Trevor Boone, unreal. Braden Ward. Now we had a little Jack Blomgren mixed in there in the middle. He's a personality. Juan Guerrero, unbelievable. And now, I mean, Carrick's his own dude. It's been a crazy mix of people, and I think that's what makes this group so special, is like we can get it done in so many different ways, with so many different types of players. We're not relying on a dominant pitching performance or hitting home runs. Like, we can win ball games in so many different ways.
And I think that's what's been so important. And I think the Rockies have emphasized that, of the importance of, like, winning in the minor leagues and establishing that winning culture more, just with the group around you. And I think that what you're saying, that's part of it, is a good team and guys that just come together And just a bunch of dudes coming together and playing some ball.
That's right. That's what we do here in Spokane.
That's what makes them one of my favorite affiliates, though. It's always interesting to watch because there's tune in on any night and you've got all these unique personalities out in the field doing their thing.
Yep.
And then you got some giant fish mascot just dancing around in the stands.
Ribby is awesome. Don't knock Ribby.
Ribby.
And speaking of some of the more random stuff there in Spokane, how'd you like being one of the oat milkers when they played back in July?
Malmo oat milkers.
I didn't like it at all. I wasn't big on the pants. The hat was a kind of a weird fit. So that in itself was a little weird. And then I don't think we played well that night either. So that just made the experience even worse. So yeah, no more Malmo oat milkers for this group.
But how do you feel about the Red Band Rally uniforms?
I do like those. Those ones are legit. And like you mentioned, Ribby, he can do the shake and get the crowd going. We even had back when Robbie Martin was here. I mean, I don't know if it was just the name or the fact that he was playing right field, which is right near the caboose where some fans get rowdy, but they loved like calling him like Ribby Martin Jr. and they had him doing the shake and dancing in right field like pretty frequently when the games got like late, like 7th or 8th, once people in the caboose started having some drinks, Robbie Martin was doing some dance moves for him.
That's awesome. Yeah, minor leagues is a weird place.
It's interesting for sure.
That's what makes it so special, though. I tell everybody, it's like there's never a better time to start getting into minor league baseball than right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much crazy stuff going on.
But shifting gears here real quick, I wanted to ask, part of what we've talked about, your brother and your dad, but also there's been a lot of stuff about your mom and, and your sister and just the relationships and how they've helped you in your baseball career. Because we always hear a lot about the dads and the brothers, the manliness of the sport, but the role that your mom has played.
I think she's huge. Her and my sister are kind of a team in a sense. So they're more on the mental side of things. My sister's a psychologist. My mom kind of knows her stuff in that world as well. And they keep things in perspective in a way, which I think is really important. When you start to like put all your attention and energy and like worth into baseball, it's going to be a rocky road. Just because like we went over, like there's going to be times where you just don't do well. That's part of it. And if all your worth and all your like happiness is invested into baseball, it's not going to end well. So they remind me that like I'm a person, I'm a kid, I'm a brother. Like we're all just humans at the end of the day. I go back to that a lot. We're all doing life. This is our first time doing it. And I think they allow me to kind of keep that perspective and not get too worked up if I am struggling, or even not even get too high if I am doing well. Just remind me that, I mean, we're all humans and we're here to help one another. And that's really the main goal in life.
Mm-hmm. That's the most important, perfect thing to know what moms are really good at.
Absolutely.
God bless baseball moms, because where would we be without them?
Nowhere.
But it's awesome. And who would you say is the most athletic out of the family? Your mom played college basketball and all this stuff. Who's the most athletic out of all of you?
I would say me. Like, not honestly. I think like you put me on a ping pong table, you put me on a basketball court, football field, soccer. Like I think I'm taking my odds over anyone else in the crew.
I like the confidence. Good stuff. But before we wrap up here, Evan, did you have any random questions like we did last time?
Favorite ballpark you've played in so far?
The Spokane count?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, definitely that. It's got that. It's kind of got the old school like wood wall, painted advertisements. I think that's just as minor league as it gets. It's got the caboose out and right. It's a very like homey ballpark, but then you don't sacrifice like the facilities for it. You know, like we still have a very nice new state-of-the-art clubhouse, training room, all that. And then I think the cage and gym are getting built as we speak. But there's a fine line between like you want that like old school feel, but you don't want old school facilities. And I think Spokane, Avista Stadium, it kind of combines them both perfectly.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a beautiful park.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Something I wanted to ask you, going there, this goes back to your college days. What was the class you were most likely to fall asleep in college?
God. I mean, it probably doesn't make much sense since I'm a sociology major, but any sociology class. Like I don't know, we just got talking and a lot of it was like about like the way we interact with like people, and it's like we do this every day. What are we learning about it for? So I think that class there was definitely some like maybe after a morning lift I had to show up and I was dozing off in the lecture hall.
Sitting up there in the back, you throw on the hoodie and clonk out.
Yeah.
Set the phone to record and away we go.
Yeah, if I remember to do that.
Oh man, yeah, good college though, and
Yeah,
sociology major. It's always I wonder what guys are going into, and so it's pretty neat.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
cool,
I'm taking 2 classes as we speak. Probably gonna do some homework after this call wraps up, and
awesome.
then I'm taking 2 this fall, and then I'll be graduated. So that'll be nice.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations.
Appreciate that.
Love hearing guys finishing up their degree even after they get drafted.
Yeah, that was a non-negotiable. And then for me, it's like, shoot, I'll just get it done. I took a class. We got a couple summer sessions. I took a class like the past 6 weeks I've been playing baseball. This 6 weeks, I'm in 2 classes. Do this fall, done. I figured I got to just get it over with. I don't want to be 25 and like taking classes at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally good on that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Evan, anything else?
I think that about does it.
That's where I am.
Sweet.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us, and really congratulations on just a wonderful season. And we wish you the best of luck the rest of the way, and appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
been an absolute delight to have you. We'd love to have you on again sometime, but good luck the rest of the way.
Anytime. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Take care.
This has been Affected by Altitude. We've been joined by Kyle Karros, and I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Farewell.
Thanks, everybody. All righty. We hope you all enjoyed that interview. Kyle Karros was such an awesome guy to talk with throughout that interview. Really nice young man, good head on his shoulders, and a lot of really interesting answers to our questions. So we thank him so much for joining us for that interview. We thank the Spokane Indians for helping us to facilitate that interview. And we hope you guys liked it. But that's going to do it here for us on this week's episode of Affected by Altitude. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on Twitter at sideline_crowd, and then find me over at Purple Row. I usually write the Wednesday rock piles, but the day you're hearing this, I wrote the Monday one. Ooh. But yeah, usually over there, Purple Row, and then find me over at fansfirstsports.com writing thingies.
And you can find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. I would love to hear from you. And then over at purpleroad.com, normally doing the Monday rock piles. But as Skyler alluded to, there's been a little bit of a switcherooski for this week. So I will be having my article come out on Wednesday, and then the weekly Pebble reports on Tuesday. You can also find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms of choice, including iTunes, Spotify, Google Music, iHeartRadio, and you can also find us on your favorite social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. We thank you so much for listening and sticking with us, and we'll catch you next time. So, Skyler, how about you hit him with it?
Farewell.